For the last two exercises, two milestones that we are going to do for this semester, we will require the installation of TensorFlow and the keras. Um, on the university computers, either in the lab or using the cloud, um, I wasn't able to actually find the installation of TensorFlow or keras. I tried to install it by myself, but I had problems with either permission or with some other kind of uh, um, uh, difficulties. So I wasn't able to actually install them by myself. So for the last two exercises, we will have to ask you to uh, try to install TensorFlow and keras on your own computer, right? Which could be either Windows operating system or Mac OS or Linux, right? The easiest way to actually do this kind of installation is through Anaconda. So you want to install Anaconda first, right? And how to actually install Anaconda? It's actually listed on this particular website, right? But you can also just by Googling Anaconda install, right? And then it's gonna take you to this same web page, right? It's it's actually giving you very detailed instructions about how to install on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, right? Or other kind of cloud-based environments, right? The process of installing Anaconda is not too difficult, right? Once you have the right operating system and also uh, the prerequisites as kind of described over this particular part of the instructions, um, you should be able to actually install Anaconda without much of a difficulty on your own computer, right? Once you have finished installing Anaconda, what actually comes with it is a application that's called Anaconda Navigator. Anaconda Navigator. Let's just Google it, right? Anaconda Navigator. And then the Anaconda Navigator actually has this kind of user interface that's kind of similar to what you can find on those university computers or lab computers, right? So if you type in Anaconda Navigator, if you search for Anaconda Navigator in a university computer in the Windows operating system, you should be able to actually open this application, and it's going to give you this kind of interface. This is what I got from on my machine after I finished install uh, the Anaconda application, right? I'm actually using a Ubuntu 22.04, so it's a Linux machine, right? And then once I finish installing Anaconda, so all I have to do is to start this Anaconda Navigator application, right? And this Anaconda Navigator application has environments. So if you look into the environments, you're going to see, for now, you only have one environment, which is called base root, right? And if you press this green button next to it, you're going to start that environment, and then you can start programming and using all the libraries that's kind of installed for you by default during the installation of Anaconda. So in order for us to use TensorFlow and keras, what we want to do is to first create a new environment. We're going to create a new environment by clicking on here. Just click on create, right? And then we are going to give it a name. Let's call it TF, right? TensorFlow. And then the package is going to be Python, right? You can select a version that's kind of suitable for your environment, right? It doesn't have to be 3.10.10. It could be something that's kind of a lower, right? You just select that particular Python environment. That's mandatory. You have to actually select one Python environment. The default is okay on me, on my machine. So now you can just click on create. So that's going to create a new environment, right? And then you can install TensorFlow and keras under that new environment. So it's it looks like it's actually have to download the Python 3.10.4 from the internet and then do the installation. So I'm gonna pause this video and then wait for it to finish. So now it has finished creating this new environment, which we call TF, and it's going to install a set of libraries by default, right? But the libraries that we are going to need is called TensorFlow and keras. TensorFlow, right? If we type in TensorFlow in the search box, we will be able to actually see TensorFlow, right? TensorFlow is a machine learning library, right? The default version is 2.9.1, right? We have to click this button, right? And then you're also going to see keras, deep learning library for CNO and TensorFlow, right? 2.9.0, right? We also have to actually download that one, right? Um, that's all is needed for our exercises, right? For the last two exercises of our semester, right? But in the future, once you start to actually use those kind of tools in your own research, you may want to install some additional libraries. For example, TensorBoard. It's going to allow you to visualize your network and also associate parameters, and also some GPU optimization of those libraries, right? If you have GPUs, it's going to speed up the calculation much faster, right? But for our exercises, we're just going to download the keras and TensorFlow, and then once we have selected these two libraries, we can click on apply. And then Anaconda is gonna start to computing the dependencies of those two libraries, right? So if you try to install those two libraries are gonna depend upon other libraries, which may or may not have installed by default. So now we have to just wait for the installation of those dependencies and those two libraries. And I'm gonna pause the video and we'll come back after the installation finishes. Okay, so after a very long wait, I was finally able to actually install keras and TensorFlow. Um, it took quite some time to actually solve all the package dependencies, and if you found that this Anaconda Navigator is taking too long to resolve those package dependencies or calculating the requirements, what you may want to do is to just stop or cancel the installation and then delete this created environment and then recreate another one with a Python version that's lower than the suggested value, maybe 3.7 instead of 3.10, right? So once you have finished installing the environment, what you can do is to start the environment. What you could do is to open terminals or something, right? But what we are going to do is to go back to home, right? And then uh, we're gonna start our spider, right? But for now, the spider is not installed yet, right? We can install it, and then we are gonna have a IDE that's gonna allow us to actually develop Python programs with TensorFlow and keras. Um, Again, I'm gonna pause the video here, and I will come back after Spider finishes the installation. So now we have finished installing Spider. So all we have to do is to launch it and take a look at how to use TensorFlow and keras inside of uh, our own Python code. And okay, so I got my Spider that's coming up, and so all I have to do is to try the import, right? Import TensorFlow as TF and import keras. And then let me just run it to see if it's gonna work. Okay, so yeah, it's working now. So TensorFlow and keras is available for inside of my Python codes. So this is actually how you actually set up TensorFlow and keras using Anaconda, right? And this is actually the easiest path that I have found. There are other paths that might be easier than this, and depending upon your operating systems and so on and so forth, and also the requirements that's already available on your systems, right? So, but this is how you actually do it, right? So this is how you actually do it. Too bad I wasn't able to do this on the university machines, but there must be some problems I haven't actually sorted out yet. Okay, this is the end of this video.